And today I brought back Fruit and Gray, and this time we're gonna talk about how going to find out how community works and how to build or sustain a community. So, uh, so first question I ask, like, how how does one start up a community?
Well, in the beginning stages of a community, it starts with people who say want to see a more organized society. Um, and they generally go around collecting people who agree with the vision of a population. That's it.
Okay,
That's really how they're laid down. So, say for
okay,
instance, I have a vision for how I want things to work. That things that I think can improve life amongst our group. Then I go over to say Zero Kelvin and say, hey, I think we should get this thing a little more organized, uh, make our lives a lot easier, spread the workload, division of labor, and all that. And Zero Kelvin says, yeah, hey, I'm down with that. And then Zero Kelvin goes on to help me in spreading this message to try to get as many people as we can uh, to help us in this endeavor.
okay. So after we help spread the workload and all that. So how do we get to maintaining like law and order there after afterwards? Like because when people get build a community and start getting comfortable, and then some people might feel like, oh, well, that person got more of that, I can just take what they want. What stops them from doing that?
There's two possible reasons for why um, they don't do it. One, it's a matter of skill and will, and the other is a matter of economics,
Okay, okay,
lack thereof. When societies are first starting, um, they start out with people who agree with certain things, right? Like, for instance, children, which is usually kind of a good uh, focal point to organize around. Usually, societies are built around the rearing, raising, and training of children. And say, I think that we should have, say, a military school. Well, people that agree with that and get together, they get organized, and then eventually they start sharing their resources, pooling them into one simple location. Um, take, for instance, in a classical society, what would typically happen is if, especially in more agrarian societies, what would typically happen because there was no currency. The only currency was basically resources that were grown or actual labor. And so, um, getting the children organized into a unit where they can be properly trained, educated, and they will go on to fulfill functions of general society. Uh, One, you would need resources, right? You need a way to feed them, you need a way to clothe them, you need a way to educate them. Those are all provided by those who agree, okay, which is members within the society itself. Um, in organizing, people have this misconception that everybody's just supposed to get with the program immediately. That never happens. That has never happened. What typically happens is a few people within society they kind of get the groundwork started, and then everyone else kind of just comes along. And if they start seeing the improvements in the community, and they say, "Oh, well, how can I get behind this? How can I get involved?"
okay. So like after the community's built and all that, I know like there has to be like law enforcement Nah, I think people generally get like the basic idea how law enforcement works, but how does it really, function? Like, how is it able to really keep the law and order, and not have people go into a state of anarchy?
Well, it depends on whether we're talking about classical or contemporary. And at classical time, law enforcement went a lot like this. Um, in classical times, men's reproductive um, ability had to be strictly and strongly, sternly controlled. Because one man can have a child every day, women can only have a child once a year. And so
Okay.
men's reproductive ability had to be tightly controlled and policed. So more so, the impetus was on punishment for men who say broke um, who broke the code, if you will, than it was
Mm,
for women. And that's typical whether we're going classical, contemporary, whether we are looking at the authoritarian, liberal, whether we're looking at patriarchy or matriarchy. The men's reproductive ability has to be tightly controlled. And
okay.
what this does is prevents the population from outgrowing its food source.
Okay. So like I know like that like law enforcement like the sheriff is generally, elected to a position, actually being actual considered an officer. Like how did the police like fit into that? I know like, part of it may be because, they needed more manpower, but how did the police end up getting involved in the law enforcement end of the spectrum?
Well, police are created in order to really settle um, disputes between people within society. Um, they were really meant for, say, land disputes, um, resource disputes. For instance, you got a farmer over here. He's growing crops, and you got another farmer over here who's raising, um, say, rodents, right, or rabbits, or some other
Right,
kind of slaughter animal, and his rabbits keeps getting into the neighbor's rabbits keep getting into the cabbages, and so what happens? You call out the police or the sheriff, and they settle the dispute. They enforce, uh, a policy that says, hey, you need to put up some kind of a barrier or fence or what have you to prevent your slaughter animals from getting into this guy's crops. You see, um, in classical times, in the time of classical empire, all disputes were settled by some kind of monarch. Yeah. Well, what would happen is if you had a land dispute, basically the monarch, the reigning monarch, would take possession of it, and then would decide on what best to do with the land. Yeah. But as far as modern policing, that is to uh, literally settle disputes between individuals within society, because
okay,
the more a population grows, the more problems arise, right?
right,
Um, the thing is that humans need space. The social scientists they understand all of these things where humans need a certain amount of space or problems arise. That's the reason why in certain like statutes or especially when it comes to housing, they have all sorts of legislation that says, okay, this many people is the maximum amount of people that can live in this kind of a dwelling, right? Because they know that there's going to be more problems if there's more than that set number of people that are inside of that dwelling. Yeah. And that's
Okay.
policing.
Okay.
Yeah.
What you say? I catch the last one.
I said, and that's basically how policing generally works. Now, modern, like uber modern policing has, uh, and this is mostly due to lack of political participation, awareness. Our political IQs very low, and that's for most of America, not just black people in general. In which policing today, because we have a system in which money rules the day. So what happens is police end up uh, doing a for-profit job, right? Um, doing a for-profit type of protection model, and basically whoever has more money is basically right, and whoever has less money is basically wrong. Yeah.
Okay. So like as far as that, like, uh, can you like explain like different types of systems and legislative? I know that's gonna be like a broad one there, but I'm sure there's like different, like the legislative branch usually functions differently in different countries. So they probably have a different setup like in different countries, but if you can somehow try to, somehow try to make a generality of it as best you can. That's that'd be appreciated.
Uh, I don't follow. Can you repeat the question?
Oh, the legislative, legislative branch in government. I was like, I was like thinking like, where are they really like? Are they different ones? And if you can break it down, uh, like, can you explain like, different types? I think that's what I meant to say.
Well, yeah, in America, and this is mostly a Western society, government is broken down into three parts: an executive, an executive branch, um, a legislative branch, and then a judicial branch. Um, Here in America, that's the base model, the tripod model that we have, where you have the executive, which can um, can have the ability to make some unilateral decisions, but not without the ability um, to have them opposed by, say, the legislative branch, or, in other words, Congress and senators, right? Or what they call the House of Representatives, which is made up of 435 congressmen and 100 senators, right?
Right,
Um, that would the legislators, they create law.
right,
Judicial branch determines whether or not those laws are constitutional, or if they violate um, other laws while in the execution of, say, an executive order, or a piece of legislation. So the judicial branch determines what lateral or bilateral moves can be made, while the legislative branch, they just make laws. They don't really care about whether it's laterally or bilaterally legal or illegal. That's for the Supreme Court to decide, which is your judicial branch. And for the most part, the president doesn't really care about bilateral or legality in general. The president just says, "Okay, I have an idea," or maybe has brought an idea from his advisor. Says, "Okay, I'll make a piece of legislation that takes care of that." And what happened is that it's peer reviewed by the legislative and the judicial branch to determine whether or not he can legally make that uh, write that in the law. Mhm. Which is why you have both Congress. Um, Congress has the power of the veto. You see. and that's what
Yeah.
it basically is. But
Okay.
there are other ones where you have an authoritarian head figure, right?
Yeah.
That basically executes uh, law on the basis of his will or her will that the lower branches would have to fulfill, right? Like take for instance, Great Britain. Great Britain is a semi-democratic republic with a monarch as a head, right?
Right.
So the Queen says, I am tired of looking at these children, wearing these self-degrading clothes, these revealing clothes. I want all the children in Britain to wear uniforms for school purposes, right? Uh,
Right.
what happens is the Parliament generally has to coalesce in some kind of a way and says, well, that's based on other factors such as economy. As Parliament will go back to Queen says it is economically unfeasible to uniform all of the children in school. Yeah. So what will happen is they'll have to make kind of tweaks. So what a Parliament does, it makes tweaks to the orders passed down by the monarch and finds the best possible way to execute the authority of the monarch.
Okay.
It's done that way in China as well as a similar system. So does Russia. Make no mistake, Russia is an authoritarian government um, in which the president of Russia is basically the supreme commander. Same
Hmm.
in China.
Okay. So any other countries that kind of have that similar government, or those just the only ones that have that type of government?
Well, yeah, you also have North Korea that has that similar government. You also have places like, um, yeah, dare I say Israel. Israel has the same type of government. The president of Israel um, is kind of a supreme commander. Right?
Hmm.
Same way with North Korea. Um, the supreme commander executes all of the authority, and and everyone below in the below offices. Right? They determine on how to execute his policy in the most effective way. Um, you had that same thing in Cuba. They had the same thing in many African nations, like for instance, well, before Kenya was, you know, destabilized by Britain, Kenya had that same form of government. It's actually a very quite effective form of government. Germany once had that form of government. Somewhat does to this day. It's more democratic today than it was, say, 60, 70 years ago. The Third Reich was an authoritarian government with the supreme commander that was Hitler. Um, so you also have, former Uganda. Uganda formerly had a similar governing style, right?
Yeah.
Under the rule of Idi Amin. Yeah. Robert Mugabe's, you know, Zimbabwe, same form of government. Mugabe being a supreme commander, lower houses determine how best to execute his policies and authority. Um, the the fall the shortcoming to having a supreme commander is that they're too easily deposed. Um, they're always under attack by coup d'états and whatnot.
Right. Yeah, I can imagine that.
Back in the early 1900s, before Russia becomes Russia, it was the USSR. Um, under the control of a monarch, the Tsar, Nicholas II, who was overthrown by the Bolshevik regime under, um, you know, my brain went blank there. But Nicholas II was overthrown by the Bolsheviks. Yeah.
Okay.
And so it's not an old, these are not old ideas. I mean, these are not really new ideas. I mean,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I kind of see you, break that down, but I'm gonna switch the conversation a little bit. From talking about the community. I know that you said that you've done like community work in your where you live. So I mean, I don't know if you want to talk about it too much, but
yeah, I work with an organization known as DFTC St. Paul, Down for the Cause, under the leadership of the esteemed Madi Arnis. And what we do is community organizing, community events. We bring Black people together. We have a rites of passage program for young Black boys. Um, we also have brothers that have a whole host of varying skills that take on apprentices and do teaching of things like uh, auto engineering, electrical engineering. We have many skills. Like we have brothers that are, coming into like age 16, 17. We have a program that helps them get their driver's licenses, right? Um, so yeah, that's the kind of stuff that we do. We do a lot of events because organizing is an ongoing campaign, as you know. Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah. I definitely know about that. Cause like the nonprofit, like I mean, I work with nonprofit Nash Peacemakers. Sometimes I work with the AACA where I'm at in Nashville. So I know, like a lot of times we gotta do events and the people and the lady I work with in Nash Peacemakers, she does like a program for like use a lot of programs for the youth. Like she'll do like straight talk for the boys, like to help them. No, yeah, straight talk for the. I think it's straight talk for the boys. Yeah, back to the basics for the girls. And like she does. She has like groups for like mothers who have lost their children to gunfights called Moms Over Murder. So, but yeah, pretty much she does a lot of that, and then sometimes they, usually I'll have her come and speak about like sex trafficking because like later on now street maker she used to be like had used to be a sex slave during like at age of 12 and she managed to get out of it. So she tries to fight against it, trying to make sure it doesn't happen to anybody else. But as far as that, yeah, like I I totally get exactly what you're talking about.
yeah, we do a lot of community events to bring people together, network. We work with many other community-based organizations. Like we have one that is one of our affiliate organizations, which is Black Truce, which is been working to decrease gun violence in the Black community. We have brothers from Umoja, which is a job placement program for young brothers who find themselves out of work or having a hard time finding work. And Umoja has contracts with various employers and whatnot. And so we work with several organizations. We also, advocate for other organizations who we may or may not work with. Um, so we also bring personalities in all the time. We bring sometimes big names. Back 3 years ago, we brought Sarah Sudenseti to town. We brought Umar Johnson. We brought the esteemed Fred Hampton Jr., um, who is on Freedom All Radio. Um, so we do a lot of these things to try to galvanize the people. Typically, what you see is about you got a lot of people that'll come out. They'll get riled up. Uh, Generally, it's about a third or less that actually stick around.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It's definitely very hard to get people involved in the community. So, so how did your organization get started, or did you, or were you like kind of like got involved like a little later after it got started?
What happened was a friend of mine um, who used to do it. Uh, he actually put me onto it in, early on. Um, he was like, "Yeah, I've got somebody that I want you to meet." He knew about my work in the community with other organizations, and he told me, he said, "Look, I got somebody I want you to meet, and I really think you and this brother should team up." And what happened is when we teamed up, and it's been a 4 year ride as because I got there while it was in its infancy, and literally it was a organization less than a year old whenever I came on board. Yeah. And now it's now it's 5 years old. I've been working with it for about four and some change.
Okay. So, how long is it? How long has it been around? I think you might have said it, but just to clarify. Yeah.
I started working with that organization in 2015,
Okay. So, cool.
and around mid 2015.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. I think I'm about out of questions. So I guess if anybody else don't have any questions, I guess I'll just go ahead and give you, final words, and we're just going in this thing.
Well, yeah, my position is real simple, right? We can change anything that we see as a problem, an issue within the black community. It's one of the things that we continue to see ourselves doing all the way up until like virtually this generation. Like this generation is the generation that has done the least of all of our history being here. And what has happened is that you have a lack of care, you have apathy, um, um, this deep set apathy. Like I don't, almost like black folk are just tired of fighting. But whenever you really look at it overall, because of the condition that we're living in right now, and most black folk don't understand just how fragile the American empire is. Right? Uh, I'd say that this is not the time to give up the fight. This is actually the time to actually go harder than we've ever gone. Like our ancestors have fought some grueling and some daunting battles to progress us this far. And what I'm saying is that now's no time to give up. It's time to actually turn up. They say turn up the volume. Crank up the pace. You know,
Okay. Well, well, yeah. I mean, I appreciate you for coming back. We will finish that after effects of war. But other than that, like, yeah, I appreciate you for taking the time to come to the stream. Really appreciate it. And and to those watching, I had the step experience at the 5. I think I may set it to 4:30. So there'll be a panel on Chicago stepping. So those who come watching, you know, just come on back. We're gonna have another stream coming up in about like in less than an hour or so. So stay tuned to that. All right, and I'll see you guys later. And y'all have and until the next stream, which will be in an hour. I'll see y'all later.
indeed.